Welcome to the Crafty Mini. Now in this one I'm going to be painting this bust. I've got a competition coming up. I'm doing 2 entries, which is this bust and a single miniature, which you'll see in a video in a couple of weeks. And in this one I just wanted to show how I paint Ork Skin. It's one of my favourite sort of creatures to paint, and over the years I've changed up how I actually paint it, and this is one of my favourite ways. It just adds a bit more warmth, and the detail in it really does pop. And on this miniature, this bust, it was a really nice way of showing it off. So I'll start off with just a simple green overall first off, and then we'll go up and start doing all the highlights. Right, so before it's fully dried, first thing I do, so I take the initial green and I add a little bit of a lighter green in it, and I'm just going to work on the highlighted areas, so anywhere that's raised a bit more prominent and that would pick up the light a bit more. So the bottom of his sort of eye socket here, the eyebrows, the nose and the mouth, and the big jaw, because on a miniature like this there's a lot of pronounced features, and those are going to get this slightly brighter first highlight, and then we'll work up from there in multiple layers. So you'll see the coverage is going on. I'm going over quite a large area. It's only the deepest recesses that I'll leave, and I'll sketch on little lines and extra little bits of detail on the flatter areas if there's no actual detail there on the actual print. And it's more just sort of going with the feel of it and picking out the areas that you think would look, that would shine up and look better, and we'll work on variations with different colours. So at the moment I'm just going to be using lighter greens for the first few highlights, and then we're going to actually add another colour in later on, just to start giving a bit more variation and a bit of warmth to the actual skin. So the first few layers, you'll only notice a subtle difference as we're going on. Now what I've done here is added a bit more of that bluish green in, and I'm taking a bit more time now, picking out more deliberate areas on the miniature. So on his eyes in particular on this sculpt's really nice. We've got quite prominent lower eyelids, so they'll get picked out, and again around sort of like the side of the brow onto the actual cheekbone, because they stick out a lot, so they're going to get a bit more, and it won't just be a solid line, it'll be little strokes just to pick out and add a bit more variation to the actual miniature itself. And again, it's just building up those layers. Sometimes as well, like you'll see, especially the last clip and this one in particular, when I'm putting on that first coat, the paint is so bright that it looks like I've almost jumped up too many steps. But as it dries, the colour will just go a bit more subtle, and you can build up those layers of opacity. And I'm using very thin down paints here, so the paint mix is roughly 2 to 1, 2 water to 1 paint. And I'm just building up those layers continuously. And if I go over the area completely of the previous layer, again, that's fine, because it's such a transparent amount of paint that I'm using. And you can see here with the brush strokes, I'm trying to pick out areas and add a bit more sort of visual detail by just stroking down and making my own sort of texture on there, stippling, moving the brush around a little bit and whatnot. Okay, so at this point, so you can see the base green colour when I went over on the teeth slightly, and the comparison to that of the skin, so you can see the highlights that I've done there. So at this point, so I've got the darkest recesses with a nice blend up to sort of my mid-tone-ish. And then what I'm going to do is add yellow to the green, just to start giving a bit of warmth. And again, same thing, very thin layers, and I'm going to work over the areas that I've brightened, and that yellow will actually kick in and almost colour the lighter pigment, because at the moment with the green and the lighter green being added for the initial highlights, the skin's quite cold looking, and it doesn't have a lot of warmth and sort of life in it, and that yellow is going to start rectifying that. So from this point on, every layer is going to have a bit more yellow subsequently added on. And this bit is using that exact same mix with the slight of yellow in, and it's just showing you another part of the model where I'm picking out the prominent areas. So again, the cheekbone, the nose, the eyebrows, the eyelids and things. And as we get progressively lighter, I'll go over less of the previous area just to make it transition, and then we'll unify it all later on with a simple trick. But at the moment it's just picking out those details, making that yellow pop, and in the flatter areas, so like that part of the jaw there that I'm painting down to his chin on the side, I'll just add a few extra brush strokes. So as the layers build up, you'll get a bit more texture variation on the miniature as well. So there should be a subtle difference now in the layers of that previous layer that's just been put on. There's a bit more warmth and that slightly yellowy hue is starting to come through. And we're going to go back and do the exact same thing again. So adding a bit more yellow and picking out the same sort of areas, just not painting all the way over where we've just previously painted, so we leave a bit of a transition. And you can see now I'm being a bit more deliberate with the areas that I'm hitting on the chin in particular, and some of the other areas later on. And I'm variating my brush strokes from side to side and up and down. And again, this is just to give a bit more visual interest in the actual miniature when it's done. And certain areas I'll pick out and add a couple more layers on, because these are very thin translucent layers of paint that we're adding. So yes, you have to go over the miniature multiple times, which can be a bit of a pain, but for something like this that's a display piece, and because I'm entering it in competition, I want to take a bit more time with it. So on the miniature as well, you've got these quite a lot of folds and subtle shapes that have been put into the actual print of he's got a really large upper lip. And so again, with that yellow mix, I'm just picking out certain areas. As it sort of, if you imagine as the top lip, as it comes down from the nose, it does arch outwards a little bit because his jaw's really pronounced. So the bottom part nearest the teeth would actually catch more light. So they're going to get more of that yellowy mix on top as we're building up the layers, because that would obviously show more, because we always imagine that the light source is just above his head. And it's little things like that, thinking about where would the light catch most, and that's where you want to go for your most extreme highlights. So you should be able to tell at this point on the actual brush that the paint has got a lot more of that yellow in, and as it's going on the miniature, I'm now very deliberately picking out certain areas. Now on this particular bust, there's some really nice creases in the skin, on the chin and things, and I'm picking those out now. And again, with that thinner paint, just building up the layers of opacity so they'll all shine through at the end. And just taking my time and really picking out areas and going through and making sure all those little details that are on this bus are picked out. And again, the paint when it goes on, it looks really, really bright, but it'll dry and the colour will be a lot more subtle once it's fully dried, and we'll again build up those layers with this. And you can see I'm just taking my time, feathering little areas, and I want to go for more of the extremist of the sort of highlights on the miniature now. Now while I'm working through this as well, this colour scheme, adding the yellow to the skin, this is sort of my go-to for Ork Skin. Now obviously with like a 28mm sort of piece, like a 40k Ork or whatnot, you don't have to go in and do this many layers if you don't want to, but a couple of layers just adding with the yellow in, you'll be surprised just the highlights it'll give, and it'll add a lot of warmth to the skin and make it really pop on the tabletop, especially at sort of like that roughly metre to 2 metre away that we stand when we're painting. When we're playing, and you'll notice the difference, and it's a really nice way. It's my go-to now for Orks, using that bit of yellow, and you should see the difference here. Right, so at this point, this is pretty much my last highlight. There might be a few little areas I'll go in again with another layer of this particular mix, but what we're looking at here is it's roughly 3 yellow to 1 of the green, and then I've again heavily watered it down, and you can see I'm just picking out the most minute of details that I really want to stand out. So he's got on the sculpt, it's got these are really prominent eye sockets, the bumps of the nose, and again the bottom part of the upper lip as it sort of arches out towards the teeth, the brows and things, and just the tiniest of details will get picked out now, being very deliberate with my brush strokes and just picking out those areas that I really want to pop. And always remember, with anything like this where you do multiple layers, take your time. If you need to, after you've painted a little bit, just pull back, have a look, see if it's, you know, it's going the way that you want to. Worst case, you can just put a bit of the previous colour back on top to darken it down. Or if it's really, really bad, and again, I've mentioned this before, is just start again. Strip the paints or just rebase coat it and start from fresh. But you can see here, I'm being very deliberate with this last highlight, just picking at areas, so the corners of those cheeks in particular are going to get a couple of layers, and it's just adding a load of visual detail to the miniature and making it pop a little bit more. Okay, so for the lips, I've got the highlights yellow and green mix, and I've added, just to get it a bit brighter, a little bit of touch of just pink. So some basic skin tone, and again it's that, so that will mix with the yellow and the green and add a little bit more warmth, and it'll be a really bright highlight but differentiate it from the skin, because obviously, you know, on a human face our lips are a slightly different shade from the rest of our skin, and that's the same sort of idea that I want here, because I know that eventually with this, once I've got all the teeth in place and things, it's going to have a very watered down wash just to bring all those colours together and get them to pop. But this initial piece is just having a slightly highlighted with the pink, and you'll see the variation. It looks a little bit more yellow than the skin part, and that's what I want, a slight difference between the lips and the skin. And this is something that you can experiment with your own miniatures. So for sort of this level of detail, this is the sort of thing I'll do. On a standard 28mm Ork, I'll just do the green and yellow and highlight the lips like that, because that's enough at that scale. But something like this that's a display piece, spend a bit more time, you know, mix different colours on your palette and come up with things, because you'll be surprised. You know, I've gone down the route of buying multiple paints of, you know, I've got 20 different shades of brown and things. There's only really 3 that I use, and then I mix to make the rest up, because I find you get more natural colours that match more with what you want. Because you, for example, with the lips on this, I want that initial base tone in there so it mixes fully, because it should be part, so it feels it's all part of the same piece. And you know, it's little things like that, and just practice makes perfect with everything that we do. Now when I get to a point that I'm happy, what I'll do is, if there's any other features, so in this case the teeth, I'll actually go in and paint them, because I want to see how the colour of the skin and the highlights that I've done work with the colour of the teeth, and make sure, you know, they're not cancelling each other out with highlights and colours and things. So I'll always go in and paint something first that's on the miniature that's close to what I'm already painting. Just double check, make sure I'm happy, and alter things if I need to from there. So for the teeth, it's a really simple one. I'll start off with this light brown, and then I'll work my way up to an ivory, going further up the teeth, and just leave it at that. And then I'll check, make sure I'm happy with the skin, and if I am, done. Other than that, I'll go in and add a bit more highlight if I feel like it needs it, or if it needs to be darkened, I'll maybe wash it down a little bit more and whatnot. But it depends on the miniature and what it is you're actually painting. And for this, because those tusks are really going to pop and stand out, and because I'm going from this darker brown up to the white, I don't want the ivory of the tusks to sort of overpower the highlight of the skin, and vice versa. So again, go back and forth, just double checking, and if I need to change anything, I will. So at that point, so I've got all the little bits done, and it's a case now of working on the rest of the miniature. So I started with the base coat, so I'm moving up in brightnesses of colours, exactly the same as I've done with the flesh and the teeth there. And again, the process of this is the same as I've done previously, just with different colours. And again, like the teeth, this is more now for me, just I want to make sure the skin really works with the colours that I've chosen for the different browns in the helmet, the jacket, and then the webbing and things, and that sort of white fluffy collar that he's got on his, it's almost like an old World War II bomber jacket type thing. And yes, I'll block these out with the main colours. Again, just take a step back, check, am I happy with the skin and the shades of it? Does it need darkening down or anything like that? And then go from there. And then what we end up with is this. So the main focus of the miniature is still the skin, which is what I want. It's the face of this particular bust. The the colours within the actual browns I think have worked out quite nice, especially in the coat. There's a bit of orange in there that I decided to add as a mix for the highlight, and that sort of marries with the yellow and the more orangey tone of his actual lips, and you can see in the close-ups here how it's gone. Overall, I'm very happy. As I say, this is for a little local painting competition that I'll be entering, along with another miniature which you'll be seeing in a video hopefully next week, or if not the next few weeks. But yeah, hope that's helped everyone. This is just a really simple way to do Ork Skin. As I say, for a larger detailed miniature like this, you can do multiple layers and take your time. But for like a standard 28mm orc, whether it's fantasy, sci-fi or whatnot, adding that bit of yellow just adds that warmth to the skin, and I think makes it really pop on the battlefield, as opposed to just doing lighter greens within there, because I find that can be quite cold and a bit miserable really. But yeah, thank you all very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.